What's up, everyone? Time for another aim video, and we're going to be looking at how do we diagnose our aim issues, what is perfect mouse control, and all these types of questions. How do we approach our training philosophy? And I'm going to give you some examples, and we're going to be also looking at some of the things I've been doing recently. And if you've been following my journey on my Twitch stream, you'll be pretty familiar with some of these things already. But here we go. I have a deathmatch here ready to roll as we explain some of these concepts. And the best place to start is by just really defining all of the terms. So what is mechanics? What is aiming with the mouse really? It comes down to two things. We've got flicking and tracking. So I'm going to flick between 2 points, and flick between these 2 points, or maybe I do a bigger flick, or I'm tracking. Maybe I'm tracking a point that's very far away. As I'm moving, I'm like tracking this, or maybe I'm tracking this now as I've switched with a big flick. And that's it. It's just a combination of these two things, flicking and tracking. And both of these things have many subcategories, but we'll keep it pretty simple. We generally have flicking or tracking on targets that are either static or they're in motion. We have flicking and tracking that is on a target that's either close to us, medium distance from us, or far away from us. If it's far away from us, they will be moving slowly. If they are close to us, they'll be moving very fast on our screens. And this is the reason why, for example, the idea of smoothness, which is a term to describe quality of tracking skill, is important. Because smoothness essentially just means your ability to speed match a target. Because, you can see I'm just using my tracking skill as I'm moving, and I'm moving at a consistent speed. So I'm having to make the adjustment based on my speed. But if you're following a target, if they're far away, they'll move slow, and they'll be moving at a fixed speed unless they have a movement ability. Generally speaking, and similarly, if they're moving, close to you, they'll be moving quite quickly, and they'll be forcing you to move your mouse a lot. So your ability to match the speed, which is really what smoothness is about, is important. So with all of that said, let's look at some of the mouse control ideas. So mouse control is really your ability to control the mouse. And what tools do you have to do this? You have your arm, your forearm. She can't see super well here, but you got it's there. You got your arm, you got your wrist, and you got your fingertips. The fingertips, wrist, arm. These are the three things. They're like three, they're like your three employees, and you don't want one of them to be lazy and then like one to be like overachieving and doing everything. Like you don't want your wrist to be doing everything and your arm to be just sleeping on the job. You don't want your fingertips to kind of be a little bit lazy, and like sometimes they're clocking in 9 and 5, but they're not really doing the extra work. You need everybody here to they're a team. They want to be working together. They want to be greater than their sum of their parts. You want all these things to be doing the things that they're most optimal to do, and you want each of them to set one another up to do the most optimal thing. So what does that even mean? So I would say if you want an example of like perfect mouse control, I've just, by the way, raised my sensitivity back to a much faster one, to my original Quake sense. So if you want a perfect example of mouse control, watch Shroud. Shroud has incredibly good mouse control, and he is always the person I would, always model after when I'm looking at like perfect, most optimal, efficient mouse control. And with that said, to explain what I mean with my previous statement, the arm, the wrist, and the fingertips are each better at certain things. The fingertips are typically better with more kind of micro or small adjustments or movements. But if you wanted to do fingertips to do like, I want to do fingertips to like 180, even with the fast sense, there's no way I can like really do that. I have to like bring my wrist into the action to do that. Is my wrist like good at doing that? Well, with a really fast sensitivity, my wrist could do that, but my arm is like way better at like 180s or big movements because it doesn't have a restriction anatomically in terms of how much it can move in space. As you can see on the mouse cam, I can like move my mouse like all over the place, and I can always keep moving it. So in theory, I could like have like really good control and move it anywhere, and it doesn't care. It's not complaining. The wrist is generally better at, let's say, a certain range of motion, and the wrist is also generally better at like more lateral movements because it's just kind of more how the joint works. And so you want to be making sure that the wrist is doing the things it's good at. So like, for me with my sensitivity, I can kind of actually flick faster than most people, and I can flick wider than most people because I got a fast sense, right? So that's fair enough. But generally speaking, I'm still not going to be wanting to flick like, I can't really like 180. I can like go over here, but let's say like I try to go over there. Let's say someone's behind me and I try to go over here. I can't quite move my wrist anymore. I'm hitting a limit. We want our wrist to have more to it. We want like more buffer that's comfortable on either side when we flick, really. So we can achieve that by having our arm do most of the work. So I'm like moving here. Let's say I'm like aiming over here. Oh, why are you camping, bro? This is, come on, man. So you can be, let's get a good example here. Okay, so I'm here, I'm like moving here. Maybe I flick here and I want to like have my ability to like aim here. I flick back. I get practiced at locking my wrist and letting my arm do the work for these like these big flicks. Then by locking my wrist, so I can do these big flicks on my arm and have it completely arm dominated, means that I can now use my wrist because it's in a neutral position. If it's a neutral position, I have a comfortable range to my left and right to operate from. So this is like one of the major considerations that we're really looking at when we're thinking about perfect mouse mechanics, because we want the ability for our wrist to always be doing the things that it's best at. And the same thing with my fingers. Like I might do like a flick with my wrist, but maybe it's like a case that I need to involve my fingertips to actually do the micro kind of adjustment. And that's where my fingertips will be more useful in the equation, is doing like these like micro adjustments once I've already done my bigger wrist flick or even my smaller wrist flick. Maybe now I'm bringing my fingers in. When I talked to Minnie, we talked about this concept that even the pro study coaches tend to have underdeveloped fingertip control or technique. So this is again, we're like kind of principally talking about mouse control. Like what should we be doing with our anatomy? Like we've got all these tools, so we should really, ideally in a perfect world, again, if we want to be like Shroud, we want to be able to use all of them well together. Now, I'm not saying that we can all necessarily be like Shroud. Shroud has been doing it perfectly for like I've watched mouse cam footage from him, and as far as I have been able to see from an evidence point of view, I think the oldest mouse cam footage I found from him is like 2016 or something. He has perfect, like what I just described. He has a perfect business of these three people all working together, and they're like a multi-billion dollar corporation already. Like these three, like I just like really taking this analogy too far, but you understand what I mean. Like he's been doing that for a very, very long time. However, that's not to say that we can't, through effective training, get way better mouse control and have complete control no matter what's going on. Okay, so with that said, now let's talk about some other things we should define. Before we look at some common issues which I can kind of speak to based on my own experience recently. So static friction and dynamic friction are also important to define, because when it comes to like smoothness, friction, we're battling friction. We're having to apply energy to the mouse with our anatomy, with our arm, to make it move in the way that we want it to. And based on your mouse weight, the shape of the mouse, the amount of pressure you put on the mouse, the skates, the pad, and all of this, it's going to have different amounts of friction. So certain movements will be harder or easier. And so, for example, tactical FPS players always prefer, or generally tend to prefer, they generally tend to prefer like control pads. And control pads, what that usually means is like a higher friction. And one of the reasons for that is because in a very flick-based game like this, where it's very precision-oriented, you want your mouse to stop dead where you flick it. You don't want it like gliding around a little bit and like being a bit shaky. You need it to stop exactly where you want it to stop. So one of the trade-offs I've made, because you can see I'm on a glass pad at the moment, is I'm going to have a little bit less control in that sense. But I'm still quite good at controlling it anyway. But anyway, so high degree of friction is what people tend to like. However, I play on a fast sensitivity, and I have a light mouse, and so I have found that a higher friction is very, very, very difficult for me when it comes to static friction, because I'm trying to hold this angle. It takes a lot of energy for me to flick off of it with my mouse, and I need to have control on like a tiny flick, a bigger flick, like in this range. And so it's very hard for me to do that when I have high friction, a very light mouse, and I have a very fast sensitivity. I'm always going to be like over flicking. It's hard to get the movement consistent. It's like very, very difficult for the consistency there. So my first protocol with regards to this was I decided to train the technique. So I picked tasks in AimLab that would help me to train this technique. So that was an arm movement, and then I like had my full control there. Anyway, so I found AimLab tasks that would help me to train the technique, because the first protocol is always, is your skill, is your technique poured? Are you just not trained in that? Which is very often going to be the case. So go and figure out like what tasks are good for the skill you're trying to train, the particular skill that you're lacking in. If you don't know where to go to do this or how to work out what tasks will be good for this, go into the Voltaic Discord and ask people. They will definitely help you. They are nerds about all of this, about aim training, and they're very helpful and friendly. So they can give you an example of like what you could do. And similarly, especially if you provide a video of what you're struggling with, they can help you even more. And then also it will be the case that they can probably tell you what you should be focusing on mentally, because when you're trying to build new techniques in, there's going to be certain mental focuses where you're trying to consciously direct yourself. Oh, I need to take these steps, or I need to feel the mouse in this way. There's like mental things happening that you need to also be doing. Don't just like load in the task and not understand how you're supposed to be playing the task or what the goals are for you in terms of what you're learning. So, because that can be a mistake and wasted time, and it's one of the reasons why a lot of people think aim trainers are useless, because they don't know how to use them. Anyway, so I did this for well over like several months, and I still found that there was like inconsistencies unless I was playing for like a few hours. I'm like, okay, well that's not realistic for me, so I'm gonna go to the next protocol, which is I'm gonna look at the changes I can make to address this issue. So in my particular case, the changes that I made, which I'll show you here, is I changed my mouse and my pad. I would never normally advise that you do this. Again, like go through the proper process. I actually have a video on my channel about like changing your settings, which is about taking the proper process and having reasons to do things, and you can quantify it. And so I'm going to give those reasons to you right now so you understand precisely why I made these changes. So firstly, I'm using the MZ1, which is Zeiss Rail. So this is like a fingertip oriented mouse, and my previous main was the Starlight. So firstly, you're going to be able to notice that with the MZ1, the way that the buttons are is that there are these grooves for your fingertips, and this is why it's named the rail, because you've got these two railings and these like grooves, so your fingertips kind of fit in, and it creates this like a lot more control with your fingertips, which is really nice and better for fingertip aiming. Similarly, another thing that's really good for fingertip aiming is you'll notice that this mouse is really flat compared to other mice. So this is a Starlight that was my main, and this mouse is really flat in comparison. I can give you another example that's more extreme, which is another common mouse, which is the Logitech G Pro wireless, and you can see that the MZ1 is like a lot. Just trying to get the angles right here. The MZ1 is a lot flatter than this one. So the other thing you can notice too about the MZ1 is that there's a hump at the back, whereas for the Starlight there's no hump. So the fact that there's no hump, I've actually understood now that it actually creates a lot less control for me, because when I'm trying to aim with this mouse, it's like hard to get a consistent grip, because you look how much space there is with my fingers. I have like very little contact at all with the mouse with this, so it makes it so that my grip is very inconsistent. With the MZ1, I get like a lot of contact because of this hump. This hump kind of meets the butt of my hand quite nicely, which creates more stability and consistency. So that extra stability with the added fingertip aiming and the hump was really nice for me, and the size and weight is really good too. So that was a great option to help me have more control with a fingertip skill, which is these micro adjustments. So the next thing is the pad. So I went from the GTFX, Zari GTFX, which is a fast pad, to a pad with even less friction, which is the ice. Oh, it's not an ice mat. Oh my god, I'm like dating myself there. It's a sky pad, and it's glass, so minimal friction. So these have been the exact things that actually met the demand that I had based on the issues I was experiencing. So you can see it's well quantified. Okay, so now I've gone over all of that. I want to go over something that's a little bit more difficult. Let's say you're making a big change to your sensitivity, or let's say you've decided that like you really need to get one of your employees, I'm going to keep using this analogy, into training. And for me, I had this happen. So what I experienced is that in using a fast sensitivity for like decades, I had very underdeveloped arm control. And so the important thing with arm control, as we described, is that it gives you so much versatility, especially with tracking targets that are close to you. Like being able to switch to like the arm movement when necessary is really huge. Being able to make like 180s and have your wrist locked, and so it's in a neutral position, so it can be optimally aiming like at a drop of a dime. Super important to be able to do that, and I recognize that. So I'm like, man, I've got to put this into my gameplay. And I had a really big struggle, which is the same kind of struggle that almost anyone's going to have, and I'm going to explain why. So the struggle is, how do you train this when you're playing the game and actually get that habituated quickly? It's very hard. And the reason is because when you're playing the game, you're thinking about winning. You're not thinking about consciously changing my aiming technique. That's not what you're thinking. You might be thinking that when you're going into the game. You might do it a little bit, but quickly your brain's going to go into the path of least resistance, because you can't put your focus and attention to all these different things when you're trying to win, because there's so many things your brain is having to put attention on. It's no longer giving a shit about, oh, I should need to focus on arm a lot more in these types of movements. It doesn't care about that anymore. So you're getting all these reps on the habituated techniques, which are the path of least resistance, which is what you're trying to change. So does it make sense to get reps on something that you're trying to change? No is the answer. So what is the solution to this problem, this conundrum? So there's a couple solutions that you can kind of go with. One is to make sure you're doing the appropriate technique work in AimLab or your aim trainer of choice, and make sure that, as we described previously, you have the right tasks, you understand how to train them, and you're focusing on like incorporating the arm. So I would even have tasks for me that are very easy for me to do with my sens, flicking. So what I would do is I had two options. One, make my sensitivity way slower and really force the arm movement just for the aim trainer. Or the other option that I also had was to keep it the same, and even though I can do like wrist aiming with the flicks, force myself to use arm. And in an aim trainer, you can use your full focus on this precise type of thing. You're not distracted for any other reason. You're not trying to win anything. You're not necessarily trying to get a better score. You're just trying to make sure that you're learning the movement, you're practicing the movement. All your attention, your conscious attention, is going into this one type of thing. And that's like what you're looking to do. So that is why aim trainers are useful, and it's another reason why many people like misuse them, because they don't know how to be effective with them. So anyway, that's one thing you can do, and you can do it before your playing sessions. So when you're doing it before your playing sessions, especially when you're using your sensitivity, like raising or lowering a sensitivity, depending on what you're trying to do, it's going to prime your brain so that when you're playing, you're gonna have that feeling of like, oh, I did this in the aim trainer. I got it in the aim trainer to like feel comfortable, and now I'm going into the game, and it's a little bit easier to kind of make those movements happen for you as you're actually playing the game. And you're not gonna like fall into the old habituated pattern quite as much. It'll still happen though, depending on what you're trying to change. So the more extreme version is to also change your playing sensitivity, which is what I did. I changed my playing sensitivity from 314 to 24, which is roughly a 25%, making it 25% slower. And this forced me to use my arm a lot more. And it's like I couldn't really play without using my arm a lot to do the thing, like to move the mouse in the ways that I'm supposed to. It really changed a lot for me in that sense. Now, I had to just commit to this, even though I knew I was going to like aim worse. And I'm removing the thing I'm good at, which is like all of my like wrist aiming as much, because I'm like, oh, I'm going to have to just arm all of this. But what I am doing is I'm like forcing myself to use this technique. And it's going to suck because, you're going to be in this place now where you're like, okay, well, I suck. I'm losing to this kid who thinks he's better than me, and he's trolling, and he's like shit talking, and he's being really obnoxious, and I'm losing elo, and I'm losing these matches, and I wanted to like rank up, and I have all these rank up goals, and I can't win, and I'm missing shots. How do I train my decision making if I can't even hit shots? I'm just like losing all the time. It just feels really bad. Everyone thinks I suck. Like, there's a lot of like reasons why you would want to like go back to your old sens, or why you would not want to change things. But the way that you can deal with that is to make sure you have a clear vision and goal for what you're doing, and you have a clear agreement with yourself about what you're doing, and you stick to it. So for example, that could be, okay, I'm going to stick to this sense for a month. I'm going to do it because I'm going to learn how to aim with it. And by the way, this can even be like a faster sense depending on what you're trying to train. And just commit to it, and know that like for me, if you do that, you're gonna eventually reap the rewards. You just have to like not be super attached to the fact that you're losing like losing more. Hopefully it doesn't happen, but there's a real risk of you playing quite a bit worse. So with all of that said, after a month, you can say, okay, I've done it for like, 2 weeks, a month, 3 weeks, whatever time you allotted. Now I decide, okay, what do I want to do from this point? Do I want to go back to my old settings and then see, like, now that I've developed the skill, is it like way easier to work it back into my game? And does my mouse control now look like overall better? If that's the case, then boom, you were successful and you habituated some new techniques that will help you to take take yourself to the next level when it comes to your mouse technique and your mouse control. So with all of that said, it is not an easy journey. It is not an easy journey at all, and I wish you all the best of luck with it. If you enjoyed this video, let me know what's what you want to see next in this kind of category of content with aim and mechanics. What was useful to you is always very, very good feedback for me, to kind of keep making sure that what I keep producing is useful for you guys. And make sure to subscribe if you already value this and you're not already a subscriber. Share the video, like it, and all that. I have made the very scary decision to be completely freelance now, and so I'm really looking to go kind of as all in as I can with my content. And that's really the goal and the vision. So I really hope that I'm able to do that. And with your support, it is possible, and I'm very grateful for it. So thank you very much, guys, for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.